So yeah, you've done quite a bit of traveling. So I know you spent some time in New York, and now you're currently in Chicago.
I've been doing some work in the Midwest. I started doing some work in the Midwest. So I'm still based in New York, but I've been doing some, traveling to Chicago periodically because there are warehouse workers out there that I started kind of shadowing in 2019. And so when I saw what was going on in Amazon in New York, I was like, this is a lot like what's happening in communities in Chicago. And if people don't know, Will County in Illinois is considered kind of the center for logistics in the country. And by logistics, that really means the trains that import all the goods from foreign countries and the warehouses that then bring those goods to our homes. So during the pandemic, obviously, like these companies and this center and warehouse workers, like all over the country, have been used overtime to make up for the fact that people aren't going into stores. And so all this stuff has been a problem for at least a decade. And they're just it's just like layers of exploitative practices from the fact that most of the warehouse workers, or I would say the vast majority of the Black and brown warehouse workers, are temporary. So they're like employed through staffing agencies. They're not actually employees of the companies that are out here. And there's a bunch of there's a bunch of Fortune 500 companies that are out here. So Dollar General to Amazon to IKEA. So all of them, it's not just Amazon, but it's like a whole ecosystem of exploitation of these workers. And so if they try and lobby to get just like minimum wages, like there's no protections for them because they're temporarily staffed. They're not considered full employees with benefits and all of that. So
kind of like what's going on with the independent contractor, so to speak, with Prop 22.
Precisely. Right. So they give them just enough work where they don't qualify to be full-time employees.
Right. Wow. So what have you learned? I know me and you had several conversations. We had a great conversation just the other day, just about my personal journey with Amazon. But I know you introduced me to other activists and from Chicago as well. And what have you learned? I know I've learned, and I just want to get your insight on what you've seen happen between the start of the pandemic and up till now.
Yeah, I'll just share the things that they told me directly. There are a lot of these warehouse organizers have been warehouse workers, or currently warehouse workers, or retired, or just left because it just wasn't sustainable. And they tell me that it's like modern day slavery because they even set up racial hierarchies within the warehouses. And again, this isn't just Amazon, it's a number of these companies contract with warehouse, kind of these third-party warehouse companies and temporary staffers or temporary staffing companies. So the racial hierarchy kind of plays out where a lot of Black and Latino workers, again, are temporarily staffed. They're considered like contract workers, but a lot of the white warehouse workers might be unionized and they don't necessarily want other people in their union. And so they're protected and they get better jobs. So they get more of the managerial jobs. They get like the trucking jobs. They get the things that basically come with better benefits and better pay. And there's a lot more financial precarity for Black and Latino workers. And they basically threaten them with unemployment. They threaten their jobs really easily if they even come together to organize. So there's a lot of anti-labor organizing from these larger companies that happens in the Midwest as well. So, Chicago, Milwaukee, wherever, a lot of that happens out here too.
Absolutely. Now I can tell you just from, once again, trying to unionize in New York, Chicago is like, that was the first city that actually connected with the workers in New York as well. There was an Amazon facility out there in Chicago that was trying to unionize for years. And they won some small victories, winning certain things in their building. But once again, I believe the company just shut their building down. Just to tell you the extreme measures of what they're willing to take. They'll close a factory or a facility just so it can stop workers from unionizing. So I can, attest to everything you just spoke about. these companies, these Fortune 500s, these billionaires, major corporations, as we see, we're watching Alabama right now in Bessemer. When it comes to Black and brown, we're already at a disproportion. And then when it comes to opportunities, we don't get the same opportunities, obviously. And when it comes to moving up in the companies, we don't get these opportunities to move up in these companies. And that all just, trickles down to the fact that we don't have the protections that we need in this country. So I just want to get your insight on how do we move forward? Like, how do we get to a better place? What kind of advice would you give to me, trying to fight against Jeff Bezos?
Yeah, well, one of the things that we talked about is forming coalitions with other workers, which, I know you've already been doing. I think that's going to be critical. So much of the challenge is that formal unionization has declined, but based on just my observations specifically in the Midwest, because that's where I've been doing a lot of my research, is that there are sort of this informal labor organizing that's going on. So Warehouse Workers for Justice is one of the groups that I've been following, and Mark Valentine, people can look him up. He initiated a case against Walmart for their discrimination. So a lot of this kind of stemmed from this discrimination case where it was uncovered that they were letting go a lot of predominantly Black workers, and came up with the premise that because they had some sort of criminal past, like 20 or 30 years ago, somehow they could no longer work for the warehouse anymore, because the warehouse was getting, initially Walmart had contracted out with them for the workers, but then they decided to take it over themselves as like a direct employer. And so once Walmart was like, we're going to take over, the warehouse back, they decided to let a lot of workers go. And coincidentally, it was around the time that the minimum wage increased to $15 a month in Illinois. So, it's kind of suspicious, the timing there. And so there was they're filing this sort of state, it's not really a lawsuit, but it's a discrimination case, like with the human rights department in Illinois. So Mark Valentine is like one of those workers. So I think people should just look in the news and just see what's happening and connect with other organizers and see what kind of informal work that they're doing. So he ended up joining Warehouse Workers for Justice. And there are other groups like that. I think that's going to be really key. I think organizing around labor, because so many of us are just trying to work. It's hard to do it after hours, because people be tired at the end of the day, but there aren't really a whole lot of other avenues other than kind of mass protest and mass organizing to keep people kind of on the same page and to talk about strategies and things like that. Because if you go to any other country, I did some comparative labor law in Amsterdam, and it required us to study these labor systems throughout the world. And the US is just so arcane, and it's evil in a way. Like my professor literally called me. It's really bad. Like my professor called me, hey, there's a girl from hell. Please tell us about your system. Because they associated America with something that was just so inhumane, for most of its workers, that they couldn't even fathom it. They couldn't conceive of it. So I think studying other systems, I think, is important too, across the world. So we know that this isn't radical. This is actually very normal and a centrist, labor organizing is a relatively centrist idea if you go to other countries.
Right. No, yeah. And it's funny because as soon as I post anything that say I'm going to be striking, or I want to call for action, so to speak. Even when it comes to just doing a walkout, it's like pulling teeth here in the country. Other countries is like, shut that shit down. Don't go to work.
Yeah.
They supposed to work for us. And we got to understand as workers, me and you spoke about this. If workers really understood their value, we understand that Jeff Bezos can't come to these warehouses and pack 5,000 packages a day. We understand. If we understood that, once again, my example is always, just imagine if 800,000 workers from Amazon, that's how many are employed today, in this country. Just imagine them stay home for one day. How much of a ripple, a tide that will cause with the billionaires, with all these corporations, they will be shaking in their boots if they seen that mass movement of workers just stop going to work. And now what can they do? They can't do anything. There's no quick fix for that. What it
Right.
is a general strike. And what it is going to be, going for the top dog, which is Amazon, and having all the other ones like Walmart, the Krogers, the Dollar Generals, the Targets, the Whole Foods, the FedEx, the UPS, all these other corporations fall in line. Because now they're going to look at Jeff Bezos and Amazon like, I don't want that happening to me, you know? So that's always my example of workers. It took me to lose my job to understand the system that I was. And I said that to you as well, um, I did not see myself in this position a year ago, exactly a year ago to the day I was just living my life. To be honest with you, I was probably with my kids. Today is, if it was a Monday, I was definitely home, relaxing, getting ready to go to work the next day. So this was a year ago. And then I remember a week from now, next week will be like when shit started to hit the fan. And now my whole perspective on this company I work for, the virus is now transitioning into New York. New York is becoming the epicenter. My whole perspective on everything changed. I worked with a company for 4.5 years. At this point, I've been a supervisor for 4 years. And I had to really contemplate with myself, like, am I going to give all of this up or put my neck on the line or be the sacrificial lamb for everybody else? And to me, it was just a no-brainer. When it came to COVID-19, it was just, this is life or death. Somebody has to do it, but it ain't going to be anybody else. And I guess I have to be that person. And that's what I was thinking. Let me just do something and see where it goes.